Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. According to the General Hospital recap, Ethan Lovett was shot while Cassius Faison aka Nathan West planned his escape. Carly Spencer was also forced to defend herself after being attacked at Windermere. Here's how Wednesday's GH action unfolded. In Sonny Corinthos' office, he explained to Giovanni Gio Palmieri that he couldn't lose someone else he loved, such as Morgan Corinthos, so Gio agreed to move out for the time being and keep away from Jen Sidwell. Sidwell changed his mind about taking Ava Jerome captive, and instead chose ADA Justine Turner. Ava ended up provoking Sidwell, who almost fired his pistol at her. However, Justine dove at Sidwell while Ethan shoved Ava aside. Ethan received a bullet to the buttocks and was in excruciating pain as he huddled in the back room with Ava, who used a drop towel to stop the bleeding. Back with Sidwell, he had Justine contact Sonny on speakerphone to bring him to the gallery. When Sonny arrived, he discovered Sidwell holding Justine at gunpoint. At Turning Woods, Nina Reeves saw Jack Brennan wasn't breathing and performed CPR until he gulped for air. Brennan stated that Ross Cullum was behind the carbon monoxide tank, and Nina knew Cullum needed to believe he was dead. Nina decided to spread her fortune, and buy some staff members into hiding Brennan in a different room under an alias. Meanwhile, Cody Bell stopped Nathan from leaving the batting cages with James West after hearing Felicia Scorpio's voicemail, and suggesting that Nathan had his own business to attend to. Nathan admitted to James that he had made a mistake and needed to go away. Despite knowing that James would hear a lot of negative things about him, Nathan promised James that he loved him, and that anyone who stated otherwise would be lying. After Nathan hugged James goodbye and left, Cody called Felicia to tell her what had transpired. Felicia realized that, based on how Nathan was acting, Anna Devane's Cassius twin takeover idea must be correct. Back with Cassius, he lifted the cover from a car he had stashed in a parking lot. Cassius abandoned his ordinary wallet and sped away because the vehicle had an Ontario license plate and a packed backpack containing a Canadian passport. Carly overheard Joe Fitzpatrick notify the PCPD that they needed to issue an APB for Detective Nathan West, since he was collaborating with Sidwell. Lucas Jones insisted on bringing Joe back to the exam room for sutures and learned that Nathan was actually Cassius Faison. Joe added that he told Nathan about the saline syringe he discovered in Britt Westbourne's room. Lucas was perplexed since Britt would never inject herself with saline solution. After arriving to Windermere, Carly overheard Cullum inform Agent Harker that Jocelyn Jacks and Liesl Albrecht will be eliminated. Harker and Cullum confronted Carly next, and she told Cullum that the game was up since Valentine Cassadine had gone to Geneva to expose him. Cullum questioned the WBS's willingness to believe a wanted criminal like Valentine, believing they would have arrived by now if Valentine's scheme had been successful. Carly didn't care if Cullum got away or not since she just wanted Jocelyn back. Cullum advised that Carly and Jocelyn be buried together because he clearly had no intention of letting either of them survive. Charlotte Cassadine and Danny Morgan arrived at the loading dock in a huge truck brought in for the project's transportation. Danny and Charlotte set off some firecrackers as a diversion, which worked because Cullum and Harker mistook it for gunfire. Cullum went to investigate and gave Harker orders to eliminate Carly while he was gone. Carly grabbed a fireplace poker when Harker's back was turned and swung to defend herself. Albrecht broke the connection to unlock the electronic door system while he was being held captive. Albrecht and Jocelyn were about to depart when one of Cullum's men appeared to block their route. General Hospital spoilers predict Jocelyn and Liesl will continue to fight for their freedom, so stay tuned. Ethan Lovett lurched down the darkly illuminated alley behind the Port Charles warehouse sector, breathing in ragged gasps. Blood seeped through his shirt from a gunshot wound in his side, a stinging reminder of the violence that had exploded only minutes before. The night air was thick with the aroma of rain and diesel from the adjacent docks, where Cassius, the deadly enforcer involved in Jens Sidwell's latest illicit venture, had made his frantic escape. Ethan had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or perhaps exactly where he needed to be, trying to protect his family links within the huge Spencer and Cassadine web that dominated so much of Port Charles' life. Carly Corinthos Spencer clutched the fireplace poker tightly in her hands, her knuckles white, as she stood in the living room of the safe house where she and Lucas Jones had sought refuge after receiving a desperate tip regarding Jocelyn's whereabouts. The chamber was a far cry from the elegant Metro Court, with its aged furnishings and flickering lights, but it fulfilled its role as a temporary command center. Lucas, Carly's brother and Jocelyn's uncle, paced nearby, his medical instincts competing with the intensity of the rescue operation. Jocelyn Jacks, Carly's tough and independent daughter, had been kidnapped days before, most likely by forces linked to Sidwell or lingering threats from the WSB and criminal underworld Joss had encountered during her own investigations. "Stay focused, Lucas," Carly whispered, her voice firm despite the panic that gripped her. "Joss is tough, but she's out of her depth this time. Thank God you recognized the ring she dropped as a breadcrumb." Lucas nodded, his face set with determination. Van Hance's portrayal of the role added a layer of sensitivity combined with resolution, as the doctor, who had survived his fair share of Port Charles tragedies, was now thrown into a life-or-death family crisis. He examined the improvised first aid kit they had assembled, knowing that if things went wrong, his talents could be the only thing keeping them all alive. Carly enlisted Lucas, and the plan quickly came together. She had made a surprising disclosure to him about the true amount of Joss's danger, her work with the WSB, the enemy she had made, and how her kidnapping was linked to larger actors like Sidwell, who operated from Spoon Island's shadows with his own agenda reminiscent of Caesar Faison's previous plots. Lucas had been hesitant at first. His connection with Carly was complicated by her decisions, her ties to Sonny, and the mafia life he frequently chastised. But familial blood ran deep. Joss was his niece, and he couldn't watch as she faced untold horrors. Meanwhile, Ethan's situation deteriorated quickly. Cash's gunfire clipped him during a confrontation at the warehouse. Ethan had been following leads on Joss's abduction, using his own shady connections and past as a con man to get an advantage in the underworld. Cassius, a towering figure with a history of violence, was loading a getaway car, a plain black sedan stuffed with supplies, bogus IDs, and what appeared to be proof connecting back to Sidwell's operations. Ethan attempted to intercede, intending to obtain information or disable the car, but Cassius saw him and fired without hesitation. Ethan collapsed against a stack of crates and pressed his hand to the wound. "Not like this," he mumbled, his mind racing to his convoluted family, his father Luke Spencer's legacy, his half-siblings, and the women he had loved and lost in Port Charles. Blood loss made the world spin, but he was able to pull out his phone and send a jumbled text to a trusted contact, alerting them to Cassius's location. The getaway car drove away, tires screeching on wet pavement, toward the suburbs, where Sidwell's influence could provide cover. Carly and Lucas returned to the safe house and received the tip. Carly's phone vibrated with an incomplete message. "Ethan has a hit. Cassius is on the move, in a getaway car headed north. Joss could be with him or at the rendezvous." Her heart tightened. Ethan was not always trustworthy, but he was family in the messy Spencer sense. Carly grabbed her coat, still holding the fireplace poker as an improvised weapon. She had used it earlier to ward off an intruder who had followed them to the spot. The defense had been instinctive. When the big thug came through the door, Carly swung the heavy iron poker like a baseball bat, shattering it against his arm and buying them valuable seconds to restrain him with Lucas' assistance. It was a far cry from her normal high-heeled power moves at the Metro Court, but motherhood and years of survival in Port Charles had shaped her into a fighter. "We can't wait for Jason and Sonny," Carly said. "Joss needs us immediately. Lucas, you drive. I'll navigate." The two started out in a borrowed car, the anxiety high in the enclosed area. As they rushed through Port Charles streets, past the hospital where Lucas had saved countless lives and Carly's hotel business, they shared stories to keep terror at bay. Lucas discussed his recent personal issues, including his relationships, his judgment of Carly's life decisions, and his desire to be a better uncle. Carly spoke openly about her regrets, how her protectiveness had sometimes put Joss in danger, and her confusing friendships, including moments with Valentine Cassadine that raised eyebrows throughout town. Rain began to rain hard, reflecting the storm in their emotions. They noticed traces of Cassius' path, discarded things from the getaway car, possibly tossed out in haste. Lucas' quick eyes saw a glitter on the roadside. Joss's ring, which she had skillfully left as a trail. She knew someone in the family would find it, he added, his hopes rising. They traced the path to an abandoned boathouse near Spoon Island's access points, where Sidwell's operations frequently overlapped. Inside the boathouse, Jocelyn was bound but not broken. Eden McCoy gave fire to the role of Joss, who fought her captors with words and intellect even when physical escape was hopeless. She had overheard Cassius' plans to transfer her to Sidwell as leverage against Sunny, Carly, and the Corinthos enterprise. The kidnapping was motivated by Joss' investigations into WSB corruption, and Sidwell's reactivation of old Phazon initiatives, which posed a threat to uncover secrets that could bring down major Port Charles characters. Cassius arrived in the getaway car, the engine rattling as he parked carelessly. He dragged a semi-conscious Ethan from the passenger seat, possibly as a negotiating chip or protection. The boss wants the girl alive, but this one is expendable, Cassius hissed into a phone. Carly and Lucas arrived discreetly, parking out of view. Carly gripped the poker, symbolizing her resourcefulness, while Lucas carried a concealed weapon that he had unwillingly taken. They devised a strategy. Lucas would create a distraction near the car, while Carly would sneak in through a side entry to approach Joss. The rescue descended into anarchy. Lucas shouted a challenge, catching Cassius' attention. Cassius returned fire, sending bullets pinging off the getaway car's metal frame. Ethan, weakening but alert, utilized the confusion to trip Cassius from behind, buying time. Carly dashed into the main room, swinging the poker with precision at one of the weaker guards, the iron landing with a painful thud. Joss, she sobbed, rushing to untie her daughter. Mom. Uncle Lucas. Jocelyn's voice sounded hoarse but forceful. The mother and daughter exchanged a quick, furious embrace before the fight continued. Lucas joined the action, evading gunfire and delivering a good blow to Cassius, his medical hands repurposed for combat. The getaway automobile became a focal point. Cassius attempted to leave, but Lucas ruined the engine with a well-aimed shot to the tires and wiring. Ethan fell against the wall, blood pooling below him. Get Joss out, he said, wheezing. Carly applied pressure to his wound with shreds from her own jacket, utilizing her Fireplace poker defense as a triage tool while barking directions. Sirens blasted in the distance, possibly in response to prior alerts. However, the immediate danger peaked when Sidwell's troops loomed on the horizon. Carly, Lucas, Joss, and an injured Ethan rushed into their vehicle and sped away from the boathouse, leaving Cassius' getaway car behind them. The drive back to safety was a flurry of exhilaration and relief interspersed with fear. Jocelyn described her ordeal, which included fights with kidnappers, dropping the ring in the hopes that Lucas or family would find it, and Sidwell's psychological tricks. Carly clutched her daughter's hand tightly, silently pledging to halt the threats once and for all. Lucas concentrated on driving and monitoring Ethan's vital signs, his doctor mode activating despite the personal stakes. The group pushed through the emergency room doors of the hospital, where so many Port Charles stories had come together. Lucas summoned assistance as he steered Ethan toward disaster. Doctors and nurses rushed in, realizing the situation was critical. Carly and Joss waited in the corridor, cuddling as the darkness settled. You saved me, Joss muttered. Both of you. Carly grinned through tears. That's what the family does. Even with poker in hand and no backup. Lucas emerged later, weary yet victorious. Ethan was stabilized. The gunshot was serious but not deadly, thanks to prompt care. Questions remained. Would Cassius be apprehended? What was Sidwell's ultimate goal with the Phazon revival? How will this influence Lucas' relationships, Carly's affiliations, and Joss' future in law enforcement or elsewhere? In the days that followed, Port Charles was alive with the aftermath. Sunny and Jason offered assistance, but Carly's own rescue demonstrated her strength. Lucas thought on his part, making amends with Carly while managing his own life. Ethan recovered and sent cryptic warnings about greater players. Jocelyn, ever resilient, fought for justice, her kinship with her mother and uncle strengthened by their shared jeopardy. The Fireplace poker, once cleaned and restored to the safe home, became a symbol of Carly's defiance. Cassius' abandoned escape car included clues, ledgers, phones, and evidence capable of dismantling elements of Sidwell's network. However, triumph proved elusive. New threats arose in the shape of vengeance or escalating wars. Throughout it all, the Corinthos and Spencer families persisted. Carly's defense, Lucas' bravery, Ethan's sacrifice, and Joss' creativity demonstrated that survival in Port Charles frequently required wits, love, and a willingness to fight dirty. As the rain stopped and daylight dawned over the bay, they stood together, prepared for whatever the restless city threw at them. The rescue had been botched in preparation, but was completed by sheer willpower, leaving scars but also unbreakable bonds. Finally, Carly booted the man's knee, sending him flying to the hardwood floor. She retrieved the dropping revolver and aimed it straight at him. "Don't move." The intruder paused. Then he smiled. "You have no idea what's coming." Outside, another vehicle sped toward the property. Carly overheard tires squealing in the driveway. For one terrible second, she thought more attackers had arrived. Instead, Jason stormed through the front door after hearing about unusual activities around the residence. He immediately secured the wounded invader, while inspecting each room for potential dangers. "Carly, are you hurt?" She carefully lowered the rifle. "I'm fine." Despite being physically unharmed, her hands trembled from the confrontation. Across town, Ethan's condition deteriorated. Blood loss gradually debilitated him. He ducked into an abandoned factory, trying to lose his pursuit among the rusted machinery and damaged equipment. Every breath got increasingly difficult. His vision clouded. But surrender remained inconceivable. The gunman slowly entered the building. The massive edifice was filled with silence. Each man searched different regions, assuming Ethan lacked the strength to resist. They underestimated him. Ethan used the situation to his advantage, discreetly moving behind piled crates before causing a distraction across the room. One attacker examined the noise. Ethan struck abruptly, knocking the weapon out of the man's hands. The struggle was brief, but grueling. Unfortunately, the second gunman appeared seconds later. Another gunshot rang out. The bullet almost missed Ethan before becoming embedded in a steel beam. Sirens eventually approached outside. The assailants exchanged concerned glances. Police had located them. Both males chose to flee rather than be apprehended, disappearing through a back exit just as officers entered the building. Paramedics hurried approaching Ethan. Despite the anguish, he managed to stay aware long enough to whisper a warning. "Cassius, don't let him escape." These statements were promptly sent to investigators coordinating the ongoing car pursuit. Cassius, however, refused to yield. His escape automobile raced through city streets at breakneck speed. He hit parked cars, ignored barricades, and narrowly avoided many crashes. The chase ended at an ancient bridge that was being repaired. Construction equipment reduced traffic to a single lane. Police expected Cassius to eventually become stuck. Instead, he took one last desperate gamble. He sped around heavy machinery and squeezed through a partially blocked portion of road with inches to spare. One chasing cruiser failed to keep up and collided with makeshift obstacles. Although cops evaded major injury, valuable seconds were lost. Cassius gained crucial distance. Even so, the damaged getaway car began to fail. Smoke drifted from beneath the hood. The engine sputtered constantly. His getaway vehicle, which once represented freedom, now threatened to strand him totally. Several miles later, the inevitable occurred. The engine died. The vehicle came to an uneven stop beside an abandoned wharf. Cassius cursed furiously before taking a rucksack full of cash and going to the waterfront. Police swiftly encircled the scene. Floodlights illuminated all available exits. Cassius had nowhere to hide and was forced to make an impossible decision: fight, alternatively surrender. Back in the hospital, surgeons rushed Ethan through emergency surgery. Friends gathered anxiously in waiting rooms, each silently praying that he would survive another brush with death. The bullet had missed important organs, but massive blood loss was still a major issue. No one could foresee how long the surgery would take. Jason came after making sure Carly was safe. He informed everyone about the attempted home invasion and Carly's impressive self-defense. Many people hard to conceive someone effectively repelling an armed attacker. Jason just nodded. Never underestimate Carly. Hours later, investigators confronted the apprehended intruder. Initially, he rejected cooperation. Evidence eventually led him to individuals who worked alongside Cassius. Carly had not been attacked at random. Someone was looking for information they claimed she possessed. It was uncertain whether that information genuinely existed. Negotiations with Cassius broke down on the docks. He gradually lifted his hands, surrounded from all sides. Officers approached cautiously. Then, without warning, Cassius hurled a smoke device onto the pavement. Dense gray clouds quickly covered the area. Gunshots rang out through the pandemonium. When visibility returned, Cassius had vanished once more. Only his abandoned backpack had remained behind. Inside the hospital operating room, physicians successfully removed the bullet. The treatment concluded well. Despite the fact that Ethan would require a protracted recovery, physicians were optimistic about his chances of survival. As positive news came, relief flowed among family and friends. However, the celebration was short-lived. Jason realized that the broader war had really just begun. Cassius stayed free. The conspiracy against Ethan proceeded. Someone had coordinated attacks throughout the city with incredible synchronization. Until that concealed commander was discovered, no one involved in the investigation could genuinely consider themselves secure. Carly returned home late that evening. Broken furniture, shattered glass, and strewn things served as a reminder of how close she had come to catastrophe. She picked up the heavy fireplace poker and leaned it against the hearth. The simple household gadget had become the reason she was still alive. Looking around the devastated living room, she realized the battle for Port Charles was far from over. Ethan had survived the shooting. Cassius had fled despite losing his getaway vehicle. Carly had defended herself from a vicious intruder with nothing but courage and a fireplace poker. Each occurrence appeared to be isolated on the surface. Yet when combined, they constituted parts of a much broader enigma. An unseen attacker continued to pull the strings, waiting for the next moment to strike. And as night fell over Port Charles, everyone realized one uncomfortable truth. The most perilous chapter of the story had yet to be written.